is going to be when to rebuttal and what not to rebuttal to save your rebuttal for the thing that you should.
Okay, and in the jungle right now we're seeing Wukong, Xin, Vi, Viego, Nocturne, Sedge.
Mm-hmm. And then some Nidalee and Zyra being like niche AP champions if they want to play double AD side lane or solos.
Yeah.
But that's more in China specifically and not global, I would say.
Wait, what does Mel do when she's hit with a Karthus ulti?
She just doesn't take the damage. I don't think she reflects it because like she only reflects things that
it's a channel,
can win
right?
well. She can only it doesn't matter if it's a channel. It's the fact that it's not a skill shot. Okay. If Yasuo's win wall can't block it,
she definitely reflects things that are not skill shots, right?
No.
Like Vigor ult is not a skill shot.
Well, okay.
It's a targeted ability, though.
It travels from A to B, I should say. So not necessarily a skill shot, but yes,
okay.
she
was like, I'm pretty sure.
Projectile.
Yeah.
So like Senna auto attacks would be immune to that.
Yes,
her
but she can still stop taking damage.
Yeah. Senna Q would go through that W.
Yep.
All right.
Unfortunately, sorry, go ahead.
Welcome back to the podcast where we're deep in the trenches of can Mel be a jungler?
Oh yeah.
It's been happening for about a half an hour now. I figured it's time to start a podcast, so
yeah, that's fair.
Fair enough.
So what's the verdict though? What's the verdict on Mel?
Oh, she can definitely be a jungler.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think she has the potential. She might not be in the exactly the right place yet, but I think she could get there.
I feel like the thing that solidifies it for me is the video that I saw today, where because I knew that she could execute minions, and that's what makes her such a easy to pick up laner, in my opinion, is the fact that you don't have to prep caster minions. And I think prepping minions is one of the hardest things that low elo players struggle with, and that separates like bronze to probably gold for actually just CSing is knowing how to prep your minions correctly to CS and get the most effective like gold generation on the map. With her being like easy mode for that or like having a cheat code, I think it makes her a really good laner. However, I learned today that it also works on jungle monsters. And not just regular monsters, but also epic monsters. I saw it work on a Herald. So if she could start blue because she has like really high cooldowns, and I feel like that's the only thing that's going to gate her is her cooldowns. But I feel like with the leash and you're already in the jungle, probably workable. People played Brand, people played Karthus. Oh, I saw Karthus earlier this weekend as well for other AP junglers we were talking about. But Brand, Zyra, and Karthus have all been meta within like the last year, and they have relatively high cooldowns early also. But with her being able to execute minions, I think Raptor Start is going to be super strong. I think actually pretty much any multicamp would be really strong for her. She could probably take Krug super easy too, so that she can have like a top lane gank at like maybe 3 minutes. Yeah, I think people when the brain starts expanding and people realize, oh, like she can execute monsters and stuff, people will start picking her up in the jungle and she'll be like a 4 or 5 lane flex.
Do you think it's gonna be like? Is it gonna get nerfed because that's not the intended position? Like I think she's intended to be like a support mid lane, right?
Yeah.
So
I think if they remove the fact that her execute works on minions and monsters, maybe not minions because they want her to still be a laner and not just be a support, but if they remove it to or remove it from monsters, I think that she will be in a much healthier place. And that would probably be like an intended change that Riot would have so that she's not played in literally all 5 roles. Because right now I think that she is viable in everyone.
You don't just think that she's viable jungler, you think that with the execute she's like broken on jungle.
I think that she is better than Zyra, yeah. And Zyra was broken in a meta where she shouldn't have been and then changed the meta around herself because of how quick her clear speed was. And I think people that were really good at that like Zyra jungle with Yone flex drafting, when they realize that she can also be a jungler to fill that role, they're going to utilize that. The thing is, though, she's probably never going to be left up in pick ban because of how good that she is. So I think this conversation matters more to casual play and less for professional play until she gets nerfed. And if they nerf her in the way that I think they should, which is removing it from jungle monsters, then or her passive from jungle monsters, then we won't have this conversation anyway.
I will say two things. One, Riot's normal like formula is they don't negate her ability to damage monsters, but they will put in like an innate reduction because they
Like
still
a
want the
threshold.
possibility. Yeah, they still want the possibility of like this person could be a jungler. But if they see it get out of hand, like what KJ's saying, then definitely I could see them being like, oh, well, she only does like 50%. Or like abilities or even her execution damage only does 50% to monsters. So then it's still relevant in games, but not as big of a deal where she could be like crazy. Also, I did want to check it out because still haven't played Mel. I don't know her that well. I know some of what she does. Her passive, she can only hold stacks for 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And her abilities only generate 3 stacks, which I'm very happy I checked because I know that her Q fires off 10 bolts. And I
Yeah.
was thinking, oh dear God, if she has like a 500 or 600 HP execution on monsters, this is insane.
The video that I posted earlier today, I'm gonna go back and look at it, but I'm pretty sure this Rift Herald was at it's at over 2,000 health, and she's not even attacking the eye when it dies.
Can she reflect the dragon's attacks back at the dragon?
I think so because Sivir can
It
spell
sounds-
shield them.
It sounds like
she can't
yes.
anymore, right?
Can she not?
I don't think so.
Oh, I didn't realize they changed that. I thought it
believe
was still a
Sivir
thing.
can't spell shield the dragon attacks anymore.
So the Herald was at 2138. Mel auto attacks once, not into the eyeball, and it dies. So well over 2,000 health right
That's
now.
quite a
And even
bit.
if they
That's
reduce
crazy.
that by 50%, it's still almost smite.
Yeah. Well, if we're talking
So I
Rift
think
Herald, it's like, oh, maybe it scales up. But I was gonna say, if it's like first Rift Herald, that's more than smite.
Yeah, but even like Barons later on, like think about a game where you have to fight with any jungler, literally any jungler, but they also have a Callista and a Mel on their team.
Me and Matt were theory crafting like the most disgusting team comp. And I said
It was Cho'Gath, Nunu, Callista, Mel, and
I picked Senna as the support so that there was more AD for the damage share. But now that Mel can jungle,
you taking Nunu out, dude? No, Nunu mid.
no.
Nunu mid.
is the support. Nunu's the support, dude. Callista could just throw him in, and then he ults.
This makes me miss when we all used to play together.
Honestly, we could really cook with this.
Or we would
Every
just
one of
lose
it-
every game, more than likely.
No,
Come on.
I don't feel like. Okay, the only reason I don't think so, is because I have become much more objective focused the more League that I watch, and I feel like Matt would be the exact same way. So regardless of how bad that we did in lane, we would just be more coordinated in our actual objective fights and just win the same way that a lot of collegiate and tier 2 teams win.
I feel like if you could filter match history based on when we were all pre-made, the win rate would be like 25%.
No, strong disagree. Strong disagree.
I-
It depends on who. It
Because
depends
I
on when-
remember-
who is playing.
You toxic motherfuckers made me play whatever role you guys didn't want to play. And I remember, especially back then, I had to play jungle. And I was horrible at jungle, and we lost every single early game. We lost all 4 dragons. We lost a Baron. And I always remembered it was just me and KJ. KJ's on his fucking frozen chicken little over there. I was playing like Jack's jungle with whatever that attack speed item used to be in the game.
Mm-hmm.
You guys remember that?
The
That-
attack
that,
speed
like-
jungle item.
Yep. I used to
Yeah.
be playing that. And it always used to be we would be in our base. They would fail to push like 3 times. We'd get all the minions. KJ would get 6 items. I would build tank, and we would win. We would reverse push, and we would win.
We would just walk it down because we
Yes.
played coordinated together when all 5 of us were on the same screen. It is really hard hurting some of our friends because they are cats and they refuse to do anything that you ask them to do. They want to do what they want to do. Then will complain about how the thing that they want to do doesn't work. And then once they finally do the thing that we want, they're depressed but winning.
You can just say you're talking about Dylan. It's fine.
It's both of the whites, if I'm being really honest, but Daniel. Not Kimberly.
I was
Oh,
like,
There we go.
I was like,
I saw the confusion on both of your faces, and I was like, they don't understand. No, Daniel.
you better not be talking about Eric right now. Eric was always down to follow us in, no matter what.
Eric is the ride or die. Eric is the
Yes.
ride or die for sure.
Yes.
Whatever the play is, he will be down for it.
Yes.
so this is the special birthday episode.
Why I have wings? Yeah,
So we got the wings out, baby.
yeah. We're doing a little Morgana cosplay right here. Got the purple hair going on too. So yeah. Shout out to Morgana.
Except, wouldn't Morgana prefer not wings though?
Yeah. This is before
If there was
I
steel
met.
strong enough, I mean, you know.
You are assuming that I am Morgana of the present, not Morgana of the past.
Past
I'm
Morgana
still here.
cosplay.
I'm still here. I'm still here, Morgana. I wish I had a saber. All I have is a cane. Because I'm old. Since we're already on Mel,
I wanted to make a darkened joke, but I'm not going to.
I could pull out my darkened blade.
You have a darkened blade?
Well, because he was
Inside
talking
of my
about his.
cane.
He was talking about his cane. Yeah.
You're gonna have to like hold it in front of you because of the way it.
Yeah, I know. So my stepdad got this for me when I retired officially and got officially disabled. But it's a metal walking cane, but on the inside of it,
It's the Lon Chaney Jr. Wolfman
Are you gonna
cane.
turn into Neferi if you touch that, or?
there is a dog on it, so
That's what I'm saying.
who knows? Actually, I think I just need some blood to make the magic work. So on my first blood, my first kill, I'll apparently turn into Neferi. But since we were talking about Mel anyway, you guys want to get into this this comic strip that came out earlier this week?
Dude. Yes.
Dude, I'm so out of the loop this week. Like, you're gonna.
Really?
This is gonna be the you filling me in episode because it's been a crazy week for me.
And
Well,
this is
good
going to be
thing
me
I watched
actually
the
having
Necro
done
video.
research. I did-
Good thing I watched a Necrit video.
I haven't seen any
Um,
Necro videos this week at all.
Really?
Yeah, it's been a crazy one.
Okay. That's fair. So the comic that came out earlier this week was basically set right after the cinematic. Mel is already in Noxus, the Immortal Bastion. And apparently the Immortal Bastion has like different sections or quarters, almost like a New York City, where it has like a Shurima town and a Piltover Zon town and a Demacia town. They have like these little
In the Bastion?
areas of, yeah, the Bastion is apparently like this huge metropolitan area inside of this giant country, or inside of the city.
Well, I mean, the
Um,
Bastion was the only thing that existed until it became Noxus, and then it kind of spread
Yeah.
out. Like, the Bastion was the entirety of Mordekaiser's, like, palace, or his domain, basically, so
Yeah.
kind of makes sense.
So the comic takes place in the Shuriman district, and it's like a Noxian arena, with Alistair fighting like a pigman. That kind of it reminded Necrit of one of the cards from Legend of Runeterra. There's like a ghost pig guy, but this one is like alive and not,
Oh, man.
I don't know, undead.
I was going to make an
basically.
Overwatch joke, and I realized you guys, both of you didn't play that game, so never mind.
Roadhog?
Yeah.
Were you going to talk about Roadhog?
Let's go talk about Roadhog.
I've been watching enough Marvel Rivals streams to understand Overwatch lingo because all of the Marvel Rivals players are old Overwatch players.
You're welcome for being able to weave Marvel Rivals into your birthday episode, so.
I appreciate that so much. 'Cause I'm probably gonna go play after this podcast.
Fair.
But anyway, so you have Alistair fighting in basically what kind of looks like a 2v2. It's like a weird animal type creature, like a mythological creature, plus a human tag team fighting another tag team of that same type. And Mel is talking to one of her cousins who doesn't really get named, and she may be important to the story later. They did give her a full face, but I don't know if she's actually important. But she's talking to her about sacrifice and the lessons that she learned from her mom, and how she feels like her mom was wrong, that sacrifice is not necessary, and that you don't have to like have a bunch of bloodshed in order to prove your strength. And basically her mission now is to improve Noxus's way of thinking, that we don't have to kill everything in front of us in order to prove our strength and or be stronger as a nation.
That's kind of already Darius's mindset, right? Darius is already kind of on board with that.
Well, at where we are right now, in the timeline, not really. Maybe she's the one that convinces him to feel that way. But as of right now, he is a general that, or like a really honored general, which is why he got sent to the Freljord, but he's not the Hand of Noxus we know today, and he's not Might as part of the Triferx. At least I don't believe so currently. I don't think the Triferx has been established yet.
That's what I want to see. Is I just want to see like the establishment of like Noxian hierarchy. Yeah. Because this motion comic just adds in like additionally so many questions as to what the state of like greater Runeterra is, especially in terms of like just not just Noxus, but Demacia and the Shadow Isles. And like with this motion comic that they brought in, they have Alistair in there. But the thing is, Alistair breaks out of the gladiatorial pits at some point. Yeah. So
he gets set free.
Is he free already? Because that whole fight that takes place, well, the whole fight that takes place is when she's a child. That's not a present fight. That's a past fight. Because her mom is talking to her and literally makes like direct references to that fight that's happening.
Oh yeah. Right. You're right. You're right. You're 100% right.
And then the whole thing with like, there's a bunch of stuff where it's very hard to tell in the lore like what is happening or isn't happening where we are in the timeline, because now that people like Mbessa have stepped in, Mbessa is kind of like absorbing a lot of the potential like Noxian lore that belonged to other characters and kind of like taking that under her, because there was other characters that were like named in actions that she kind of is like being given credit for. Like or who? Being considered or like for. There was the one it was the comic, which is no longer canon, I think, about Darius's city. And it was like the person that originally like took it over when it was rioting. And then
when Darius and Draven first got like brought or taken into Noxus, basically.
Yeah.
Noxus
so
proper.
I forget who that person is, but essentially like a lot of what they are kind of like considered, they're kind of considered the third point of power instead of Mbessa, and Mbessa's not really like a character that exists in old lore, at least not as prevalently that I have found.
Which makes sense though, because she's dead.
Yes. But like the kind of thing that I was circling back to is Alistair is actually freed by like a servant that helps him like get out of the pits. And so like at what point does that happen? Because after that he essentially like roams Noxus and tries to like be essentially like Batman, like countryside Batman.
Yeah.
Kind of like being like the vigilant savior of the people until he feels like he's earned the right to go home. But I want to know the name of Mel's cousin, because I'm wondering if like Mel's cousin is potentially going to be the servant that frees Alistair if he's not free already.
That would be cool as a cool tie-in. I like that.
Yeah. So there's just like weird little things, but I want to know more about like where are we? Like, has the rebellion happened already? Is it going to happen in the show? Like, is that going to be like the big pinnacle of what they show off? The chaos and then the order that takes place?
I have a pretty good idea. And we kind of talked about this last week. But because of when Darius gets sent to the Freljord to fight Trundle, that is right before Darkwill gets taken out of power.
Yes.
And with the Bite Mark cinematic it seems like LeBlanc is seeing everything that is happening currently, and it doesn't look like she's looking through time. So I would say that everything that is happening directly after Arcane, since we start with Mel on the beach. And if that's true, that means that Swain is basically about to take over Noxus, because by the time that Darius gets back from the Freljord, Swain has already taken over with the help of Draven, who was supporting his rebellion.
Yes.
So it seems like that is where we are, and either the rebellion just happened or is about to happen, and that may be like episode 1, I would say. I don't think it's going to be the full story of the next show. I heard a rumor. Sorry for the
Umbrella Academy reference.
Umbrella Academy reference, but yeah. I heard a rumor that
I don't think I want to listen to the rumor, honestly. I'm a little scared.
The next show is going to be called Iron and Blood, I believe. I can't remember.
Isn't that a
where
line in a
that.
song?
Ashes and Blood was a song from the first Arcane.
Okay, that's probably. What I'm thinking.
And Iron and Wine is a folk band. So, but anyway,
yeah, everyone knows that.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
I totally forgot where I was before.
Sorry, dude.
You heard a rumor.
My brain's an Umbrella Academy.
No. I already did that. I already did that part. About the show being called Iron and Blood. That was a tangent from my main point that I was talking about.
Oh.
My bad.
We were talking about the first season, the first episode.
Come on, Allison.
It's doomed.
Get it back.
It's so good.
It's possible. So good. It's possible that the show does start back in time a little bit.
Oh,
because go ahead.
Sorry. That it's likely that the first episode of the show is going to be about the rebellion, but I think the majority of the show is going to be about rebuilding Noxus, because that seems to be what Mel's like main drive is. And while I think that Mel is going to be like our Jinx in this next show, and Swain is going to be like our Caitlyn, or maybe even I wouldn't say the Vi, because they're not like that dichotomically opposed.
I feel like Darius will be Vi.
Yeah. But either way, it's like it's like two sides of different. They want to achieve the same goal, but they go about it in two separate ways, and you're going to have those butting of heads where they're not really enemies, but they're antagonistic towards each other.
I think it's safe to say at this point that, well, I'm certainly changing my opinion. I think it's safe to say that KJ has changed too, because previous episodes we were saying that Mel's going to have a backseat in the Noxian show and is going to be too busy to be a main character. I think it's pretty clear at this point that she will be a main character in the next show. So
yes,
I don't think I said that.
You didn't. You were on board with Mel being. Yeah, it was me and KJ that were naysayers on the Mel.
Okay.
One other thing that Neckert pointed out in his video is the Mbessa book that's coming out should be about Mbessa's life prior to going to Piltover. And so the flashback that we see in this motion comic of Alistair fighting and Mbessa telling her about sacrifice will probably be referenced, if not fully fleshed out, in the book.
Might give us some more references towards Mel's father as well.
Yeah, which I'm really hoping for. One of the showrunners mentioned that her powers are specifically linked to sun powers. And I found it really interesting that I was going back through the Medarda clan, because Jago was mentioned or referenced in Mel's bio that released earlier this week as well.
Oh, I did watch the video on Mel's bio. I did actually.
He was supposed to be the leader, or the head of the Medarda clan that was stationed in Piltover when Mel got there. I kind of have the assumption that he died at some point, because she seemed to be the head of the Medarda clan in Piltover before Mbessa got there. But he was helping, his whole, like, where they got their money from in Piltover was building sun gates, which is basically like, in my head, I've equated it to the Panama Canal in Piltover, to go between the different seas of like the Ionia Bilgewater side and the other side of Shurima, like the peninsula of Shurima. but they were like in charge of building those and making them more efficient. And then Zon was supposed to be running them. I don't know if they've changed this lore since Arcane has come out because they didn't mention the Sun Gates at all. But it's interesting that there's another reference to not only Shurima with the Sun Discs and Sun Gates, but also the Sun as a Targonian power. And I might be back on the Pantheon is her dad train, or Atreus, I should say.
The construction of, I don't remember Sun Gates, but I know that the canals that they build in through Piltover and Zon is what creates that rift. Is they use too many explosives and drown Zon, basically. Like, it's the construction of the canals that causes Zon to go under Piltover. Like they
is that why up. Like, so like I was vaguely reading this, and so like right after is when they like prayed for Janna to come help them, right?
Yep. So they used too much explosives and they would have all died, but Janna like shields the city from drowning. So
I think the Sun Gates, based on my understanding, was to redirect the water in such a way where Zon could still survive, but trade could still go through where the water would have been. So they could still have a trade route, and then control of it was given to Zon so that they actually had a source of income. But I feel like also it's kind of messed up that the Hex Gates were introduced because that was like 10 times faster travel and probably took away a lot of Zon's resources as well.
I mean, that's how it goes, right?
True.
Capitalism right there.
That is capitalism.
But also the Hex Gates are decommissioned now at the end of Arcane, so...
Yes, so maybe the Sun Gates will actually be lucrative again.
Yeah. When you were talking about the inside of the Bastion, it was just making me excited to walk around it in the MMO. It sounds like it would be new Stormwind, and it sounds sick. I'm like pumped about that.
I did not play enough WoW.
Wow.
Honestly, sorry.
Somebody in the comments will be all about it. That's all I gotta say about that. Although most people have played WoW were Hordes, and I always played on Alliance, so maybe somebody will be disgusted that I didn't say Orgrimmar, but that's all right. It'll be fine.
I'm really glad that when I tried playing WoW, my computer couldn't handle it. That's all I'm gonna say.
When I tried to download WoW, it took a week. Like a literal week to download it. I had like 6 or 7 discs in this big case, and I just kept shoving it in the computer, and we were on dial-up internet, so like the actual install took forever. But then we also had to get the update because it was disc, so it wasn't the most recent version of WoW. So then to download the update from dial-up internet took forever. It took literally a week. And then people kept getting on phone calls. Parents had to use the computer because it was the one computer for the household.
See, this is why I play RuneScape. Didn't need all that.
Yeah, but it was WoW, and it was awesome.
Do you still play it?
No.
That's crazy. I still play RuneScape.
Like right now you're playing RuneScape, is what you're saying.
Let me open another tab. I literally have RuneScape. Here. Send you guys a screenshot of all of my games that I have on my computer. Copy, paste, boom. Look, right there in the middle. That'd be RuneScape. Right next to
old school?
Right next to Pico Park and Terraria.
We don't talk about any other RuneScape. It's only OSRS.
Okay.
Nothing else matters.
I'm not quite sure how to pronounce her name. Ilia is what I'm gonna assume is the person that rescues Alistair. But based on like her description, it doesn't seem like this would be her cousin. Based on what I know about Mel, and if she's hanging out with her, she like in my head would have a similar moral compass. Yeah. And the things that this girl does like towards the end, I don't know.
No, I definitely, I don't think it's like a guaranteed thing. I just, it was kind of the thing I was bringing in where like, Mbessa. Mbessa's
Mhm.
character's story is getting intertwined, and she's pulling things from other old lore that now like belong to her as a character. And so I was
I-
just thinking, it was just like her cousin who is the servant. It would be like a unique little thing if like she's the one that frees Alistair in the show, if he's not
So
free already.
It doesn't seem like they're pulling other people's lore and making it now Mbessa's. It feels like Mbessa's getting inserted where it feels like it could have happened, and it doesn't disrupt the current lore that we have unless they're doing like a super big retcon. Like we don't know what Alistair was doing the entire time that he was caged or who he interacted with. We just know that he was locked there and probably a part of the gladiator pits, right?
Yeah. Well, we know he
So-
was part of the gladiator pits.
Yeah, sorry. But we don't know like who he had interactions with really, other than Swain and Darkwill, I would assume.
I mean, yeah,
But,
like
like-
he could be like the Hulk for like the Planet Hulk series, and it's like he
Yeah.
actually likes being in the pit and he stays there because that's what he enjoys. Like they could pivot
Like
the
a
story
set
so it's
vibe.
like that instead. Yeah. Oh man, I actually would love to see like an Alistair versus Set like fight animated in Arcane style.
It'd be sick.
Bro, a Falcon Punch versus like the Unbreakable Will of Alistair.
Alistair
Yeah,
Unchained.
dude. Yeah, dude.
So they also showcased what would probably be like a cool skin at some point for Alistair.
Unchained
And in my
Alistair.
head,
It's our
no,
new
no,
skin.
it's. But he's chained still, so it's chained
Yeah,
Alistair.
him and Silas carry those chains, man. They don't give a shit.
Yeah.
They just live in those chains. They're
It would be really
jewelry
cool
now.
to see those two like actually team up.
The chain gang.
I want to see like a
Unchained gang.
I want to see like a very like stereotypical like like fist bump as they walk into battle kind of thing.
Yes.
Like
the
they
Vegeta
fist
Goku thing.
bump. They fist bump and like their chains like clink against each other, and then
That'd be
they
sick.
both just like separate and go their own ways.
You just have both of them dashing at you.
The eventual choreography for some of these fight scenes, once they bring like the universe more and more together, it's
I'm-
gonna be beautiful. I want to see Riven fight. I want to see Katarina do some more things. I want to see Draven in like an extended animation, like throwing his blades and catching them. Like I want to see stuff like that because this art style and like the kind of cinematography they've shown us already is so pretty. I just want to see more of it.
Arcane
We're
was really
definitely
good
gonna
at
get
that.
some driven axe spitting.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
were really good at action scenes in Arcane.
Yeah.
Just they felt really good.
I think the best thing about Fortiche is that they utilize so many different art styles, and the art style gives you like a sense of setting in itself. It gives you like a sense of emotion just by itself, and it allows the message to be conveyed in a way better way. That's why I liked their like they had a lot of cinematography like montages in season 2, but I think the reason they work so well is because they were all in different art styles that helped tell the story. They were like using the art style as a narrative piece in and of itself.
That's I think key to having a good show nowadays is you just have to make sure you're giving people enough breadcrumbs to follow your story without ever telling them what's happening. Like once you start explicitly spelling out what's happening, you lose the plot. And I think people just are not interested and it's not a good story anymore. Which we can point to the Avatar universe, not James Cameron, but The Last Airbender, where the new Arcane show, I thought it was fairly good in some parts, but or not Arcane, Netflix, the new Netflix show. I thought it was fine, but they have scenes where it's just like Aang is going to be talking about exactly what we're doing next, and they're going to like spell out everything, and we have to like rehash how everybody's feeling to every new character that shows up, and it's like, we get it. Just like
Yeah.
give us a facial expression that tells us the same thing. Like we don't need
exactly.
you to
Let
spell
them
this out
react.
for
We can
us.
tell. Yeah. So I was watching a YouTube short, I think, and it was about you were talking about like showing us things. One of the things that they didn't show is the conversation between Echo and Jinx. After during episode 8, or sorry, the beginning of episode 9, when he stops her from
He's
unaliving
reciting.
herself. Mhm.
Oh gosh,
And
such a
what
hard scene.
what that conversation was like that actually got her to help him and then go to Piltover. And what was pointed out was in episode 8, when Jinx escapes the prison, she tells Vi that there's no good version of her. And Echo, having seen the good version of her in the alternate universe in episode 7, could then present that as evidence to her with also his time machine that they or his Z drive that they made together, and actually show her there can be a good version of you if you want there to be, and that would give her hope to live.
So the theory is that they made out, and that's why she joined the fight.
No,
Wow.
That's
I
not what I said
totally
at
didn't
all.
follow then.
you are such a disgusting pig.
And that's the podcast. Thank you.
Because that's exactly what a depressed person that wants to blow themselves up needs. Is somebody just coming in like, hey, you want some of this? It'll make you
Echo's
feel
like,
better.
I kissed you once, and I want to kiss you again. That's what he's saying.
He didn't kiss her.
No, they do
No.
kiss.
No, they do kiss. They do kiss in episode 7.
He says, can
He
we
didn't
pretend like
kiss
it's the
her,
first
though.
time?
Yeah, and then they kiss.
Yeah.
He didn't kiss her. He didn't kiss Jinx. He kissed Powder in a different timeline. That was a different
but that's
person.
what he's.
That's like saying that I'm not Khalid, I'm KJ. They are the same person. They just act very differently, but they are still the same person. You are still Matt, even though 10 years ago or 20 years ago,
You were Matthew?
you were a very different individual.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point, Nate. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Who's this Matt person?
I don't know any Matt.
20 years ago, Matt could have used a severe wake-up call. So,
But yeah, I just thought that was interesting as like it's a very likely that that's what he told her to get her to not do that is, hey, there can be another version of you that isn't super destructive, and that also leads into her leaving.
It also kind of
It's
makes
over.
sense because I think there was a very Jinx Powder aesthetic to the Z Drive in the show, right? Because part of it was actually built by her, and he can be like, only you would have made this. Like, look at this
Yeah,
thing.
the clapping monkeys.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly,
with the symbols.
Yeah, that's like in the actual Z Drive. So he can tell her the story. She won't believe it, obviously, but he's like, here's the evidence.
Well,
So
like
that
right
does check
before that scene actually ends, she looks down and sees the monkeys, and they like pan over with the camera to show it, like signifying that she sees it, and that's like right before she stops completely.
That's cool. I like that.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think if there was anything else in the bio or cinematic or bio or comic that was important enough to talk about. Matt, you got anything?
no, we kind of covered most of it. I was very excited to see Alistar. I want to see where his story is going to go, because I feel like he would be a very interesting character, especially depending on like how they run out his lore as somebody that like kind of embraced the gladiator pits, but also had like such a like positive turn once he gets out in the original lore. I want to see more of that story. I hope they involve him as a character, because that would be cool to see, even if it's kind of just like sending him off to like interact with other characters or do his own thing.
You did mention something really interesting though about that scene happening in the past, and I wonder if he actually gets freed in the book, and that we don't actually get to see him imprisoned in the show.
I hope we don't.
Okay. But this was the other thing I wanted to bring in, which we had kind of talked about the show and things that could happen. If the rebellion, the coup d'etat, the transfer of power, however you want to say it, happens at the beginning, the show could possibly revolve around unrest in Noxus and sending out the various like factions and people in order to like restabilize the region. And we could run into like a whole multitude of characters on like the outskirts of Noxus by seeing that. So you could see Alistair, who is potentially roaming the countryside, being this like, urban urban Batman. You could possibly see some of the Shadow Isles characters who are like on the fringe areas of Noxus interacting with people. We might get like Darius doing like a revisit to his city and basically a like an animated storytelling version of his the Blood of Noxus, I think it is called. The comic.
I think that was the short story, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like you could get like a re like animation of that. So there's a lot of different ways where you could like go out and still see like stories interact and stuff like that.
Is it possible that we're completely wrong about the next show? Because this the way that we're setting it up right now is a very political show, which was also Arcane. Arcane was also a very political show. So do we think that they would run it back with another political show because Arcane was successful, or they try to tell a different story to give us more variety? Because it sounds like if they do the next show this same way, it's going to be like Arcane 2. But if they do it as if it's more action-packed, like I kind of feel like they're going to avoid all this diplomacy stuff, and it's just kind of gonna be a background message. I don't know. It feels like it has to center around Swain taking power and the formation of the Triforix and all this stuff that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
But I feel like that would also just be perceived as Arcane 2, and they're just kind of redoing the same thing. They're copying the homework and just changing it so it doesn't look like it was copied. That's
what Riot does really well. If you look at every single one of their music videos for Worlds, it's basically the same exact formula repeated over and over again in almost the same art style, with a song that, like, you could take out a World song from the music video, replace it with another World song from a different music video, and you probably couldn't tell the difference.
But people
in
also,
in most cases.
I don't think you could argue that the World's music videos are cinema, though.
There's a lot of people on Twitch chat that would like to have a word.
It's just a hype music video is all it is. It's not cinema.
No, that's literally what people will write when they watch these World cinematic, or either World cinematics or the season start cinematics. Both of them.
Well, the season start one was definitely cinema, but
what are you labeling as like cinema though? Like
no, what I mean is they're not trying to tell a story other than, you know, it's the story of the struggle of the players that have made it to Worlds, and we're trying to tell the, you know, like that is the story that they're telling every Worlds. They're not going to change that. That is the formula, because it's a Worlds hype cinematic. That's what it is. But if it's a TV show, you don't want the same show every single year, because it's like, okay, like we already know what's going to happen. It's going to be the same story.
If you start with the same base, but have different characters or different personalities go through the same like test, you're going to get very, very different results. So even though Piltover and Zaun started off as a political struggle between these two cities, and then everything got released based on the personalities of the characters we have involved, Noxus's characters and motivations are very, very different. So even though we start off with the same premise, the direction that all of these characters naturally acting out would lead us is a very different place than it was in Piltover and Zaun, which is why I think it's a different show. But it follows the same baseline formula where fans of one can latch on to the next.
It's also very important to point out the elements that are taking place in the show as well. Not just all the stuff that KJ said, where it's like characters, interactions, decisions, personalities, magic, darken, like all of these different elements, demons, actually like an entire countryside of a region. Not just two cities having essentially like a civil war with each other, but encapsulating an entire region. And not just that, but also the conflict between potentially Demacia, the Shadow Isles, people like Alistair that are essentially like imprisoned, like actually imprisoned and like forced to fight. Like that's such like crazy different scenarios. Like I get the political thing you're going for, but I think this is like a whole nother level of like bumping up. This is like evolving all of the stakes compared to the last show.
So, do we know that Noxus is the next show to come out? Like, is that actually confirmed? Because hear me out. We're getting this continuation of Arcane, all this Noxus stuff, because that's like the theme for League of Legends right now. But the show isn't going to come out for at least like a year, which there's going to be 2 more seasons of stuff at the Rift. Like, what if season 3 of Rift is Demacia leading directly into the Demacian show? Like, do we actually know that the Noxian show is the next one to come out?
I think it would make the most sense in like terms of publicity and marketing that you would have this giant show that's like super popular end. And then the next media thing that you put out as a company is a continuation of that thing. And then you also have a book coming out that is a continuation of that thing. It would make almost no sense hype-wise to not League of Legends fans, not League of Legends lore nerds, but to the casual Arcane fan that just liked the show. It would make absolutely no sense to like drop them into a brand new show that has no connective tissue to Arcane.
So what would make sense is that the Noxian show comes out this summer. Because otherwise you're getting all this content from League of Legends that has nothing to do with, like, we just had the Arcane show, we've got the cinematic, we've got all this stuff happening, the book, everything leading up to the show, and then we're going to put that on ice, and we're going to have 2 more seasons of stuff that's unrelated to that. Right? Like, doesn't the show have to come out, like, this summer in order for that build to actually work? Because otherwise it's going to be a step back.
I think it could come out at the end of this year, which was actually my prediction like 3 podcast episodes ago, maybe 4. But I said I thought it was going to come out at the end of 2020.
So then what's the next season of League?
September onwards, I think, potentially. Which would actually be after season 3.
Yeah, and it would be around the time for Worlds so that they could have a big promotion with that and then weave that in.
It would have to be promoted
just
way
like
before.
Arcane season. I mean, I understand.
It could be promoted before,
you
but
literally
the trailer...
said that the first time I said this, and then I corrected myself by saying that during Worlds last year, they had an Arcane teaser for a very short period, and then they had Paint the Town Blue, and that only came out 2 days before Worlds, and that was still hyping up the new show. Yes, we knew the show was coming, and when it was coming by that or earlier that summer, but they could still do that with one of the cinematics for like Demacia, like assuming that the next 2 seasons in the League of Legends, not the show, are going to be about Demacia and Ionia. If they are both Demacian stories and Ionian stories that also link them to Noxus, which there are a lot of, then that still is a through line for all of the different information that is happening in Noxus and with Mel, that you could still have a continuous hype train leading up to November, or like Matt said, through September to November is what I'm saying because of work. And then you release the show because that's when they did it last year.
Also, flat out, straight up, and this is pretty much for like all sports, all events. I will stick to this. China has the best ceremonies, the best visuals, the best presentation. Worlds 2025 is in China, baby.
And by the way, I will say 2024 was pretty great. So
it is. But dude, think about like the Olympics and like all the stuff that they do for that. Like they're just so good at how they plan out and like visually design everything. Think about what they could do if that is where it's like the precursor for Worlds or like the opening ceremony. They include like the Noxus like teaser in there. Maybe not like directly, but like the dancers and stuff that they had for like this last Worlds, I think it was, where they had all like the transformation, and I think it was like Kindred doing the dance among wolves and stuff like that. Like take that, but like put it in China with all of their dancers and performers and like their massive audiences, massive stages, lights, shows, all that. Dude, that sounds like an insane hype for
Okay.
like a.
Go ahead, Nick.
Hear me out, number 2.
All right.
Mhm.
It all has to be connected up until the next show comes out, right? So we know that the shows are Noxus, Ionia, and Demacia, not necessarily in that order, but we know those are the shows. We have 3 seasons of League. It's going to be Noxus, Ionia, and Demacia. Like, it has to be, right?
I would switch the order around, but yes.
Okay. Not necessarily in that order, but if they have to all be connected and tied to each other to keep people like come on, we're still coming, we're trying to gap to the next show, and we need to keep you all interested in the lore, it's going to be progressing the story that whole time if it all has to be kind of connected. So I think that the show would absolutely not be about the formation of the Triforix. I think that's going to be happening in the hype videos that we're getting, in the comics that we're getting, in all the lore drops that we're getting now. We're going to see that kind of happening in the background. I think the show is going to be more second Noxian invasion of Ionia and invasion of Demacia. I think it's going to be like in the future, not necessarily like just after Arcane.
So I strongly disagree. I think the reason that they won't necessarily have to progress the lore that much is because they're not really. The comic that we got today was mostly centered in the past, and then still directly after the cinematic. The cinematic did not really show us that much. It showed us a little snippet of Mel's future when she's like running towards the Immortal Bastion, but that was a vision, and everything else seemed to be present to when we left off of Arcane. So what they could do for these next cinematics is actually just have a vision of someone seeing the future or a potential future. Or they've done cinematics before where they are, like with the old Yasuo, is a potential future that could happen maybe. And so if they set that up and seed it out for things that could happen in these different regions that are related to Noxus, or with their relation to Noxus, then I don't think that they have to progress the narrative at all. They could just seed out a bunch of things that could maybe happen, and or characters that are there and their personalities, but they don't really have to drive the narrative anywhere.
So how are they gonna toe the line to try to connect it? How do Arcane fans care about Demacia?
Mel.
But Mel's in Noxus.
Or Katarina, because Katarina is the one that kills Jarvan's dad. And so you've already shown Katarina in this Mel setup, or this Mel cinematic. So you either have LeBlanc, Vladimir, Katarina, Elise, Darius, or Trundle do something, and that is still connected tissue that also could lead you to Demacia and or Ionia, with at least 2 or 3 of them each for each place. Probably not Trundle because he's still in the Freljord. But you could have Katarina and Darius going to Demacia. You could have Swain, LeBlanc, or Vladimir in Ionia.
I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I'm like super back and forth on this because I think they want to keep towing the line and keeping people interested. But if they do that too much, then the people that didn't follow are not going to watch the next show. Like, for example...
That's why I'm saying it has to be Noxus.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also don't think you really have to have, like, fluid connective tissue, like you're saying, for the shows.
Between shows?
I mean, well, yeah, because, like, look at, like, the people that came to Arcane. Like, they were not necessarily League of Legends fans. They came because the show was good, and the characters were vibrant and interesting. So, like, while Mel is this connective tissue that they're taking to Noxus, I think as long as they do a good job with the storytelling and the voice actors are given good direction and writing, which I think they will, because it seems like the people that are actually in charge are fans and want this to be good and are putting in a ton of work, I don't think that'll be a big problem. Like, I think, sure, you need to create story points you need to talk about places. Like you need to talk about the Shadow Isles and Ionia and Demacia and Targon. But I don't think like you don't have to do the Marvel thing of like, oh well, because you missed out on the show, like you don't understand anything anymore. You just have to like create like unique circumstances and have people interact in interesting and driving ways. That's pretty much it.
I don't think the way that the show would be written, you would have to have watched Arcane to understand Mel as a character. That's not the point that I'm making.
Yeah.
What I am saying, though, is they are spending a lot of marketing dollars on different Noxian things that all have to deal with either the principles of Noxus or the establishment of Noxus or how Noxus functions as a country. And they are putting a character that we know just left the main place to go somewhere else. And that was one of the last two scenes that we see in Arcane episode 9 or season 2 episode 9 is Mel looking at her mask on the ships riding to Noxus, and then the last thing that we get is Jinx on her blimp. So the thing that I'm thinking is they're going to continue that, like, I don't want to say this. It makes sense that we go through one exit to enter the new thing with the same character, especially if all of the marketing dollars are continuing that tunnel from one show to the next. Like all of the in-between media is about what we last saw on the last episode of the last show.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that.
I think I would be surprised if it picked up immediately on that note.
Well, immediately after that note was the cinematic.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's going to I think that what happened in the cinematic is not going to be rehashed out. But we already have... Go ahead.
Yeah, I really think it's going to be separate. It feels to me like they're going to go the Last Airbender Avatar route, where there is so much story that you don't necessarily need to know or be connected with, that you miss out if you just watch the main stuff. So if you're just watching the main shows, you're watching Arcane, you're watching the Noxian show, you're going to miss out on all this stuff that's happening with Mordekaiser and Mel and all that. But that's okay. That's for the like crazy fans. That's what it feels like Riot's going towards. Riot's going towards. That's literally what we're here for. You got to watch the comics. Or you got to read the comics. You got to watch the like smaller stuff. Like Avatar, you miss out on so much of the show. There's so much of the lore that's going on with that if you don't read the comics, which I never did. So there's a lot that I don't know. Like apparently Zuko's mom is just known if you read the comics, but I never did.
So here's my rebuttal for that Mel reference. I don't think that they showed Darius versus Trundle if we're not starting with the Triforix establishment. You could have had any Noxcrian arena fight scene happening. You could have had like Draven versus Riven, or I guess they've already done that in a cinematic. But you could have anything in the actual arena or the fighting pits, or actually show a fight inside of the Immortal Bastion itself. But they didn't. They showed this one, which one gives us an exact timeline or time frame that the cinematic is taking place, and it gives us a time frame for Arcane, because I was looking this up. The time jump in episode between 3 and 4 in season 1 is like 6 or 7 years, and so we know exactly like when we could actually probably date Arcane, the entirety of Arcane in the Runeterran timeline, and so we know where we are now. And it makes sense to me that we would pick up slightly after that, since they've given us a anchor point now to know exactly where we are.
We'll see.
I feel like the next time we turn on our cameras, KJ's just going to have a whiteboard in the background and just be like that Charlie Day meme where he's just like...
Yeah, that's me, for sure.
Yeah, I
figured it out.
This is good because we have... We'll see who's right on this. I think it has to be one of us. But I do think that the next show is going to be not strongly but loosely connected to Arcane. And people that watched Arcane are going to be dropped into a new universe for this next show. And I
100% agree with that as well.
I just don't think that we're picking up where Arcane left off. And I think that there's gonna be gaps in the knowledge if you only watched Arcane, and if you
There's
didn't
no
follow
way
this.
that there's no way that they lore drop the four principles of Noxus twice in Arcane or 3 times in Arcane, once in this new comic, and then they don't talk about the establishment of the Triforix in the next show.
I mean, it still works if the Triforix is already established at the beginning of the next
but the
show.
cinematic that we just got says that the Triforix is not established.
Yeah. In current timeline, that the people that only watched Arcane are gonna miss out on. They're gonna miss that lore.
The Bite Marks Minizu video is the most watched cinematic that League has ever made.
I know.
And
Well,
it was that 5 days after it got made.
It's kind of true, but
No, it's the most watched cinematic, not the most watched music video.
Yeah.
But cinematics itself, most watched in 5 days. So I think more than just the normal League of Legends people that like League cinematics were watching it. Therefore, the Arcane people had to be the additional people that were watching it super fast and super early. Therefore, Arcane people are getting this in their feeds and in their timelines. Because like their Netflix accounts is still going to link it to their YouTube and their Google and their search history, and they're going to hear about it from friends because like, oh, look, Arcane put out this new thing. It has Mel in it. Let's go watch it. Like, I know that a lot of reaction channels that were reacting to Arcane reacted to the cinematic because it was Arcane hype.
Yep, I don't doubt that.
So I think
at all.
most Arcane fans have seen this.
I definitely
it's
think
not a
that,
niche thing anymore.
I think that right now, I think that Arcane fans did pay attention to that cinematic. I would be surprised if Arcane fans loaded up League of Legends and followed the motion comics that are in the client.
No, I'm not saying that the comics are necessary like everyone's viewing. I think that's for us specifically because it's in the client. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, see,
But
that's what I'm getting at is
was,
there's all that happening that's going that Arcane people are going to miss. If you only watched Arcane, you're going to miss all of that, and you're going to be, I think it'll be fine. I think the show's still going to be written in such a way where it's fine if you drop in just from Arcane, but there's going to be a lot of context that you're going to miss if you did not pay attention in the year leading up to this.
I don't think it's in the past though. The comic book thing is in the past, not right now.
Just to clarify, because I completely agree with you, Nate, on most of what you're saying, but I think that from most of the content that we've seen so far, which is the cinematic, the motion comic, like the Mel story, where it's like the letter that she wrote to her mom that she then throws overboard, like all of that stuff. And like, let me finish my thought here. But I don't think any of that matters for the vanilla watcher. I don't think any of that information is relevant. That is stuff for us where we're like, oh shit, there's Katarina, there's Elise, there's all these things. It's like when we were watching the first show, when we were watching Arcane, and we are spotting all these Easter eggs that nobody else is seeing. My wife is like, what's Rabadon's death cap? What is Hex Tech? What is a Z drive? Is that person relevant? Like, those people don't understand those things. They're just watching a good ass show. But that's the deeper stuff for us, where it's like they're giving us good content right now that doesn't matter, but for people like us has tons of value. And I think they're doing a great job with that. And I don't think they've gotten to the point yet where they are releasing things that vanilla viewers, for lack of like a better phrase, vanilla viewers will be like suffering from. I think they're still going to explain everything very well.
I think I agree with Matt that what is being released as the filler content for us is not necessary to tell the story of this next show. But I place more emphasis on the things that are like geared more towards, as you said, the vanilla watchers, which I think the cinematic is, and the comic is not. And so I weight the information that we get in the cinematic much more highly as to where the narrative of the new show is going, rather than what we get in the comics or the short stories that are going to have less eyes on them.
Yes, I think we're saying the same things, because I'm pretty sure that's what Nate said in different words.
I
booting up the client is not what the vanilla viewers are doing, but they are enjoying the cinematic and like looking at the story that's evolving through that kind of
I
stuff.
think we're all in
Yeah.
agreement right
Yeah.
now. I think what we disagree on is I don't think that they can keep living in the past and like showing us past events for the next year. There's going
but
to
they can
there's
show
gonna
us
have
Arcane
to
is in the
be
past.
there's gonna have to be story progression throughout this year to keep people interested, to keep the dedicated people interested. They can't keep just giving us flashbacks. And then that is when people that weren't dedicated are going to be lost with the new show. That's
Arcane
what I think.
season 1 and 2 are both flashbacks from what we thought current lore was.
That's true.
So I disagree that they will not keep giving us backstory for things that are going to happen in the future for the next year. If for the last 6, that's exactly what we've gotten.
Yes.
When we catch up to current events, then I will agree with you. But until then, because we've already, like, Arcane has established that we're in the past from what we thought was current, that I think they will just keep on fleshing out some of the stuff that we kind of know, but don't necessarily have exact details about. I think that is the type of stuff that we're going to latch onto. Neckard is going to talk about. All of these lore heads are going to do deep dives into to further explain all of this stuff and build up so that by the time the show actually comes out, more people have a grasp on the world and the nature of things that are happening. We already got a Mordekaiser story that establishes his backstory that people are going to be expanding upon. We got a LeBlanc and Vladimir kind of backstory about them summoning Otacon. We don't actually know why, but we know what it is and what they're doing, or who they are at least. We have these explainers of things that are likely to be set up for this new show.
I have a question for you, Nate. Are you a fan of Stranger Things?
Yeah.
So you're gonna watch this this new season that comes out, yeah?
Yeah, I don't know when it comes out, but I will watch it, yeah.
Okay. So you are going to watch the 5th season that has taken 9 years since the show came out to come out. Yes?
I think you're kind of getting to my actual point, but yeah, keep going.
I was just gonna say, like, essentially the season 4 of Stranger Things came out in 2022. It's been 3 years since that last season, and you are still interested enough to go on and watch another season, even though they've given us no content, no story. As far as I know, no like comic books, anything like that.
Right.
So while this is like a new system that's setting up, they're still going to carry over so much viewers from the Arcane base. And if this is still a Netflix show and they keep everything on Netflix, it's going to pop up for those Netflix users. They're still going to get emails. Even if they cancel their subscription, they're going to be like, hey, I know, like, we miss you. By the way, Riot's coming out with a new show since you watched Arcane and that was part of, like, your formula. I think there's a lot of stuff in there where, like, my wife is going to want to watch the new show.
Yeah.
She's not seen any of this. I don't think she's seen the music video, the cinematic, obviously not the motion comic. She's going to want to watch it. She's excited about it.
I agree. My point is almost entirely that when Netflix sends out that email saying like, yo, Riot made a new show, it's not going to say like, and don't worry, your favorite characters from Arcane are there. It's going to be, Riot made a new show, you're interested, right? And they're going to be like, oh yeah, I'm interested. I loved that show. I don't think it matters that there is cohesiveness between the shows. I think that people know they liked Arcane. Here's the next show from Riot. Let's give that a try. Let's load that up. And as long as it's a good show, they don't care that Mel is in it. They don't care about it being like right after Arcane ended. I think all that matters is that they make another good show for like the general person. They don't care that we're fleshing out some new LeBlanc lore with like the Black Rose. They don't care about this whole Otacon thing going on. They don't care about any of that. They just want a good show to be made, and it doesn't matter if it's actually connected to Arcane or not. I think that's what matters more to the like general audience.
While I would agree that people like to consume good content, I think from a marketing standpoint of a large organization, you want to maximize the number of eyeballs that you're going to get on your product. as well as maximize the number of retained eyes on that product going forward. And not having any type of cohesion between season 1 and season 2 may not lose them a lot of people, but if they're losing 5% of their viewership, that's 5% of their monetization. And Riot is not about that. They are about maximizing vision. So it doesn't make sense from a marketing standpoint for them to have all of this in between filler episode about all of this stuff going on and then not elaborate on that for the actual show, and or have some type of connective tissue from the previous show that people will be able to latch onto for the next one. Yes, a lot of people would still tune in for a Demacia show that has nothing to do with what's going on in Piltover because it is made by Riot and Fortiche, and they have amazing storytelling, and they already trust the brand that it's coming from. However, there are some people that would be turned off and or confused about what's going on in this show if it didn't have some type of connective tissue. And so I think as a way to guide viewers into this new show, it's best to give them some type of familiar footing so that they can feel like they have a grasp on this new world that they're entering that has nothing to do with the previous thing that they had. They need something to hold on to and latch on initially. And by one, having all of this seeding information, and if you didn't see any of that, having one person from the previous show makes the most sense to get a handhold on it.
I think we'll also get like a better gradient for this when the trailer drops. Because if that trailer blows up, then it's like, okay. A lot of people have literally just been like for every show, they just wait for the trailer, and that's their first taste where they're like, oh, okay, like new season, new show. Like, okay, let's see what it's about.
I would say that the Bite Mark cinematic was kind of that, because most of the reaction channels that were reacting to Arcane season 1 and 2 that then reacted to this music video were saying this is like the epilogue of Arcane 2.5. This is like the thing that we want. So if you're already kind of building up that hype with this, why would you pivot from that and or not continue with that hype train if you're continuously getting that hype? That doesn't make sense to me.
So two things. One is more of a soft point, but Riot specifically said they don't care about the monetization of the lore. So bringing up that they need to maximize and like not lose 5% because they're all about maximizing items or maximizing money is true for League of Legends, is not true for their lore. So
so we'll replace money with interest then, because to me they're kind of the same thing. One begets the other.
Point two is if you look at the MCU, people that were really into Iron Man watched all the Iron Mans, but they also watched Doctor Strange when it came out. They don't care about Doctor Strange. They don't know anything about Doctor Strange. But you tell me this is related in some way to the really cool Iron Man movies that you put out and is going to lead into the Avengers movies, I'm watching Doctor Strange. I don't care that I don't know nothing about this guy and it's a whole new universe. I'm still watching it because it's made in the MCU. And I think that's what matters more, is they're just putting out a good show that maybe loosely ties to the other show. It doesn't necessarily have to be a hard tie. That's kind of what I'm suggesting.
And don't overwhelm people, because that's where Marvel is. They're now like resetting from that, but they certainly did a little too much there. But I think if I'm talking purely like up to Endgame. Up to Endgame, they had everybody tied in, and it didn't matter if you knew the new show. Like, nobody knew who Captain Marvel was, but everybody watched the dang show because you got to, or movie. You have to watch everything leading up to it because you're just invested in this story that's been building. And they're all, other than a little cameo at the end, very loosely tied together. Yeah. But you know that they will be tied together hard for the Avengers movies. Well, and some did better jobs than others of those. Like Guardians of the Galaxy, I will say, is like the best trilogy that just stands like completely independent from the rest of the story. Like, it's got the Infinity Stones in it, sure, but like it is. Whenever people say that like they're not sure about Marvel or they're scared about that like oversaturation and having to watch everything, I literally always recommend Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy because it's so independent and good that you can just watch it not worry about anything else if you don't want to.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember the Incredible Hulk and or the original Thor movie? Like 2008,
Edward
2011.
Norton and bleached eyebrows. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Were there Iron Man references in either one of those movies?
Yes.
Exactly, because that was in the release order, the very first two that came out that started establishing the timeline. You had Iron Man, then the Incredible Hulk, then Iron Man 2, then Thor, and then they had the Avengers. But there was still connective tissue that led you from one to the other before everything was actually established so that people would actually still be interested. You guys are talking about Guardians of the Galaxy and Endgame, but that's in the middle of all of this commotion that's happening. That wasn't at the very beginning, which I think Arcane is at. So instead of looking at like the middle and end of the MCU, you have to look at how they started building out the MCU in the first instance. And that's with Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, and Thor.
I would just like to clarify that on that. And that's more just like a nitpicking nerdy thing. But the Incredible Hulk was actually not meant to have any sort of connection.
Okay, so Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, and then Thor.
Later on, because they wanted the interconnectivity, they reached out to Universal, because Universal technically still owns the Incredible Hulk, which is why he has not had any solo movies since Mark Ruffalo took over, and he's only in other people's movies. They made a deleted scene where they had Robert Downey Jr. go talk to General Ross to tell him to leave the Hulk alone.
Okay,
so it was a retroactive change, but you are still technically correct. Sorry, I just had to get that out.
Doesn't that bolster my point even more if we ignore the Incredible Hulk then? So it's Iron Man 1, then Iron Man 2, and then Thor, which also had Iron Man references. By the way, it's officially 12 o'clock where I'm at, so happy birthday.
Happy birthday! And it's probably a good time to start wrapping things up.
Yeah. But I guess my point is we should be comparing Arcane transitioning to this new show, if we're comparing it to the MCU at all, to the beginning of the MCU and how it started, Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, Thor, then the Avengers. And not necessarily to how Endgame, Guardians of the Galaxy, and the spin-off shows worked, because that is much later in the timeline after everything was established. I feel like Arcane was a good start, and you have to make a second step that isn't too bold or too far in order to keep people's interest and trust, because a lot of things flop on the second attempt. And if you don't latch on and really establish yourself as, yes, we can be this rock every single time. It's not just Arcane. It wasn't just a one-off. We got this. If you don't like guide them through that, then you're going to lose a lot of people, in my opinion.
All right. Well, thanks for watching the show. Make sure you like and subscribe the vidya. And
yeah, thanks for attending.
And
leave a comment saying happy birthday
to KJ in the comments.
I would love to hear them. Thank you.
And we'll see you all next week for Matt's birthday. Yeah.
Heyo.
Did you forget when my birthday is? Because it's not next week.
Oh. That's awkward.
I know when your birthday is.
I definitely thought you were doing that in jest. I thought that was like a joke.
No, it was definitely a joke. All right, goodbye.